Vampires have become a bit of an enigma, a monster that spans everything from children's media all the way to the horror genre. A monster that has glittered, that has growled, that has transformed into a bat, and just about everything else you can think of. From silly to serious, these creatures of the night have never managed to leave the media's attention for too long. Fads have come and gone, but just like the immortal creatures of their mythology, vampires remain. Not to say that they're the only creature that span genres so widely. Fairies, werewolves, all of these have their place. All the same, as a vampire author myself, I want to understand the trope. I want to understand the mythology. And more importantly, I want to understand the popularity. And I doubt I'm alone. So this interview is going to be a little different. Normally, I interview one guest about one very specific topic, such as exposition or building dread within your story. But today, I've amassed a vampire panel for all of you, so we can discuss in detail what makes these fanged creatures so popular and why they continue to haunt our media and our hearts. Now, normally I would have my guests introduce themselves at the beginning of the video because that's how manners work, but seeing as there's 6 of us, that would make for a very long intro. So I'm gonna have everyone tell you about themselves at the very end. So the first question that I brought up in the chat was, is vampire itself, is it its own genre? Because it stretches across so many things. Like we've already talked about it. You've got sci-fi going, Alyssa. I've got a vampire buddy cop mystery. It just goes all over the place.
Well, I think you just answered your own question. Like, define genre. Like, vampire is its own thing, but genre is not the right word.
True, but at the same time, you explore in your video essays talking about vampires in a topical way. So does it become its own genre in a way? Because I've
I
had
mean,
so many
it's
people
its
come to my
own category, right? But genre is a certain type of categories. Like, all categories are not genres, all genres are categories, right? So, like, maybe we need a better word for what vampire media is. It's not a genre. Buddy cop is a genre, right? But what is vampire media? Maybe we should ask the academic. Andy, what would you call vampire media?
So, there was an academic called Weinstock who noticed that there was a thing used in sci-fi called the megatext, and the megatext, people can go into sci-fi films and know things automatically because it's part of the megatext, and I think that works really well with the vampire genre. Weinstock imported it in. It works to me as well with Dracula being its own megatext within the vampire megatext.
And from a marketing standpoint, I do a lot better, I feel, when I try to market it as my stuff as vampire than I do if I say it's fantasy or it's horror or it. And people keep trying to shove it into paranormal romance, and it's not.
Right. If I go to someone and say, I wrote a vampire novel with the Company of Death, they'll think, oh, like Twilight. The Company of Death is not like Twilight. So you can't say I wrote a vampire novel. It depends what people are thinking of as vampire today. Vampires are always evolving, right? People have a certain idea of what vampire is in any given era, whether it's like a year or a decade, depending on how fast the landscape of vampire media is changing. And it has been changing very fast lately. So you could say, I wrote a vampire novel, and someone might be like, what genre of vampire novel? If they're savvy enough, or they might have an idea in their head, and they might be like, oh, I don't like scary books, so I wouldn't like your vampire novel.
Oh dear God, don't even
I've
get
totally
started on this.
I have totally gotten that reaction, and anyone who's read my book, they would not be scared by my vampire. He bottle feeds newborn kittens. I'm sorry, no.
I love that. I love that.
I have the opposite problem when I try to sell my book places. People are like, oh, I want to buy this for my daughter. And I'm like, how old is your daughter? Oh, 14. No. This book is actually like a metaphor for domestic abuse. And there's a lot of
Twilight's for children.
Right. And they think that it's like, but this is not Twilight. There's a lot of bad things that happen in my book. So, and not just love stuff. Bad stuff. So
I tend to call it a genre in everyday conversation. I used to work in a bookstore a long time ago, and I was allowed to sort the books any way I wanted, which was an amazing gift. And I made a vampire section. And it was, yeah, I do tend to market my books. I mean, they sell to vampire fans. Of course they do. They sell the best. And I love vampire fans because I am one. And I think to people who aren't vampire fans, yes, they go, oh, it's a horror book immediately. You know, they think of, I don't actually know what they think of, or they do think of Twilight because Twilight was so huge. You know, now they know a little bit about the new Anne Rice stuff, you know, on AMC. I get the whole metatext thing. It does cross genres, though, like you said. There's fantasy vampires, there's horror vampires, there are paranormal, lots of paranormal romance vampires. So, but I do wonder if it's the same with other creatures. Do they also cross genres, or do they stick?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, vampires are people, right? And people can
Yeah.
be in any genre.
Vampires get everywhere. You cannot watch TV shows without vampires turning up half the time. So vampires were in Buck Rogers. Vampires were in Diagnosis Murder. They were in Murder, She Wrote.
Is it like in sitcoms, like every sitcom has an episode where XYZ happens? Like every TV show has its vampire episode.
Almost.
So that kind of leads into the second question that I was posing in our chat, which was, what themes do vampires bring out in stories kind of naturally? The trope of, like, you know, the human is the monster is obviously a big one, but what are the other common themes that we've personally noticed?
I think the thing that they bring out most compared to other monsters is the hidden monster. The monster right in front of you, the betrayal. You could have a monster like that who is a human, someone who you think you can trust, but then turns out to be secretly evil. You know, you see that kind of trope in normal non-sci-fi all the time, but the vampire is the monster representation of that.
And the idea that not all monsters are ugly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Quite beautiful.
Yeah. And also I feel like they lend themselves to both mortality and immortality. The whole, are they dead? Are they undead? Is everyone around them dying? And also exclusion. I used to be human and now I'm not, and I'm excluded from these daytime activities.
Yeah, The Loner, the Outsider. There was a book, I can't even remember what the name of it is, but it was lovely comparison with how the gay community, the LGBTQ community, and the vampire tropes have sort of matched each other. Especially oh yeah, do you remember the name of it?
Yeah,
I read it. Okay, you don't have to get it.
She has the big vampire library. Trust me,
she does.
But it's yeah, definitely for the outsider. It's definitely a symbol of the outsider. Also, obviously, addiction. I play with that a lot in mine. I've had people accuse me, why is your vampire so obsessed with blood? I'm like, you answered your own question. Yeah, I actually love all of these things. It's why I love the being so much, why I love the vampire so much. It's a lovely exploration of darkness. Like, just imagining a creature that must at least risk killing, Twilight notwithstanding, but at least risk killing.
Oh, in Twilight, they risk killing. That's like a big plot point. Like,
that's true, yeah, but
it's so close to her because he might kill her, and that's why he doesn't want to sleep with her because it's so dangerous.
There's a video essay recently that was talking about the whole trope of the guy who has too much power over the girl, and the girl's just irresistible, and they started calling it the shadow daddy. I'm stealing that from now on. It's too funny not to.
Yeah, the addiction thing, I feel like werewolves and also Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and vampires, they're all very much addiction, especially alcoholism, I feel like. You know,
that's
because
what Anne Rice
like,
put into her vampires because she was an alcoholic.
I mean, very much addiction, the addict, or the thing that's you're addicted to. Because often they make the victim addicted to the vampire. It can stand in for like the ruling class, the 1%. So I mean, your first vampire was a Lord Riven, your first media vampire. Voltaire compared the vampire crisis in the 18th century when everyone thought Eastern Europe bodies were rising. He compared them to stockbrokers and bankers and
sucking the blood out of the people.
Absolutely. It always got me in Underworld, of the first Underworld film. Vampires were were like a ruling class and the werewolves were the working class.
And it's also very common as well in a lot of things to depict marginalized people as vampires in order to malign them.
Yep.
That was the thing in the Dreyfus affair in France. The newspaper started depicting Jews as vampires. And also there's some really horrible racist 19th century cartoons depicting black men as vampires.
And then the flip side of that, the reclaiming of it in the post Anne Rice era of the marginalized people identifying with vampires being the most likely of the monsters for people to identify with in a positive way.
Yes, very much.
I think that's because of the line that Anne Rice took, and maybe some other people. I think she may have been the first really major, the line of sort of the tragic vampire, the guilty vampire, the vampire seeking redemption.
I mean, Barnabas Collins did it a little bit before, but you know, he wasn't that shameful. Like, he wasn't that redemptive. But she definitely popularized it. She made it big.
She basically soccer kicked urban fantasy into what it is today by making vampires more modern. This is the big thing that got me writing vampires, actually, is I was reading, again, one of my mom's naughty books that was on the top shelf. And I was 17 years old, and I was reading another, pardon me to the people over the pond, fucking English lord, romantic vampire interest, and I was so done with this trope. Now, the reason was because I didn't know books like Let the Right One In, and it's the Will Smith movie that was not based.
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend.
I knew if I said Will Smith, it would get me there. I Am Legend. I didn't know those books existed, right? I was obviously not their age. I was 17 and very impressionable. That would have been bad. But I didn't know that. So to me, this is vampire literature, is romance, tragedy. I know. I wanted to explore the history of the world using vampires. That's kind of what brought me into this genre.
I think you and I have that in common, because I definitely delve into, well, half my book is historical vampire fantasy, so
ditto, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the fun of having an immortal character.
Yes,
right?
exactly. To be able to have like this really long lifespan and to be able to do all this historical fiction, straight up historical fantasy in the middle of your book, it's great.
Barbaro takes off with that. She with her Saint Germain, Count Saint Germain. He lives for a long time and he has all these adventures, and she's written many books of him doing the hero thing throughout history. So it's really a different twist, because that is definitely the vampire is not the monster take on vampire lore is in her books.
It's so funny because if you look on the covers of the reprints of her books that came out after Anne Rice's books, it was like, he was doing it before Anne Rice was. It's like, why is Anne Rice getting all the credit? Count Saint Germain existed before Louis did.
Because sometimes marketing is there, dude. Like, I'm sure there's a vampire buddy cop mystery out there that was well out there before mine. It's just marketing. It's what happens.
Yeah.
But no, Catherine and Aisling, you both brought up an excellent point. It's the fact of like long-term consequences, because both your books have this trend where actions from the history of your character are what's causing the current problem. And later in the series, mine does get there. So I think that's another trope that we explore, is like, for the unintended consequences that we just can't see coming.
One of the fun things I'm exploring with vampires in my books, because they do take place in near future, it's not far future sci-fi, it's like nebulously 50 to 100 years in the future, is, you know, you have this vampire from the 1600s, and we could go back into his backstory and look at all that. We will, not in the first book, because my editor told me to save it for later. But we also see like what he's doing past now. Like, how does he keep taking this into the future, into the sci-fi era? Like, it's not just up to now like we see in most books. Like, what will he be doing in the sci-fi future too? Where does this 1600s vampire go from here?
I'm trying to think of a futuristic vampire movie, because I know I've seen at least one.
One or two of the Underworlds, I think, when they got not as good as the first one. Yeah.
Wasn't Blade futuristic?
And that movie Breed, that was basically trying to be The Matrix, but with vampires.
I've not heard of it. So I'll have to look
I don't think I've seen it.
Know that was.
I did a video on it.
Okay.
You just go watch my summary, so you don't actually have to watch it.
Absolutely.
Catherine, you might like The Breed, because it does a simile of the Jewish Holocaust, basically, as a background to it. So
yeah, it has some really interesting ideas. Just they could have done it better,
Idea versus execution.
There's plenty of vampire film they could have done better.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's part of why I started my show. Is just like the vampire movies have a bad reputation. Let's talk about why.
Yes, they do.
On my blog, I have a top 100 vampire films and the worst 100. So
I'm assuming there's crossover there.
no.
Oh, good. That's good. That's good. That's good.
When I started my channel,
blue sky in between.
People would ask me, "Aren't you going to run out of vampire movies to talk about?" And I was like, "No, there's like over 400." And this was back in 2011. Now there's like,
oh yeah,
100 more than
Oh,
that.
they keep making them. They keep making them.
What I want to know, and this is perhaps whatever, but what I want to know is why is it that publishers and filmmakers can't seem to self-regulate when it comes to vampires? They're either like all in, I have to everything has to be vampire themed. All the vampires to the public gets like burned out, and they're like, okay, no vampires ever again.
Do you think they do that with other trends?
I was gonna say the superhero trend is pretty much hitting that wall right now. I feel like every category, we'll say, instead of genre, it kind of hits this wall where they realize it's not profiting, but they can just kind of think, well, maybe just one more. It's kind of like me and chocolate. Well, one more won't hurt me. And then I can't wear my favorite sundress
right now. What's hip with the kids?
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, the whole dystopian thing, with the Hunger Games and all that. Then there was 1.5 million dystopian with a strong female lead for and the whole young adult thing, and
yeah, it just and I agree that they do that a lot, but it feels to me, maybe it's just me because I'm a vampire fan, but it feels to me like they do that more with vampires. I don't know, but they definitely.
The thing about vampire movies that I've noticed is that a lot of directors' first movies were vampire movies. Like when I'm reviewing vampire movies, I was like, oh, this was this famous director's you've heard of first film was this vampire movie. So it's like you have a lot of these filmmakers, artists, young filmmaker people with a dream that want to make a vampire movie. Why? Why is that their first idea? Because it seems easy. It seems doable. It comes from some natural place. It's an idea that they have. It seems achievable. And it's driven by some sort of artistic passion. There's something about this vampire movie idea that makes them want to make it, like in their young id mind. And I feel like whatever that drive is that makes it seems easy and desirable is also the same thing that's speaking to studios and companies and networks. Like, oh, vampires are hot right now. Vampires are easy. Yeah, let's do more vampires. Right. Oh, vampires are oversaturated. Well, vampires are cheap. Like they're so easy and cheap, so they're degraded. Like, ew, vampires, those are cheap and easy. It's two sides of the same coin. This is my theory.
I wonder if part of that is also like we said at the very beginning of the call, where it's such a flexible category. Like we can joke all day, but quite literally, vampires have successfully integrated Sesame Street, young, arguably somewhat abusive romance novels, all the way up to legitimate monster media such as, again, Let the Right One In.
Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying was pretty intense, yeah.
And that's pretty serious too. It's got comedy in there.
Yeah.
Like What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, What We Do in the Shadows.
Everyone just took a collective sigh of happiness. This leaves our last topic, which is, what have vampires done for you as a person? Without getting into the weeds, because now everyone needs to know everything. I came from a very, I'm just going to say it bluntly, fucked up home situation. Did not have to do with my mother with the awesome vampire books hidden on the top shelf. She's amazing. But writing vampires, it did help me process a lot of the information I didn't realize was inside me. And writing those has kind of helped me see the monster within the humanity that is everyone and learn how to be, I hope, a better person because I'm a parent. So hopefully I'm not passing that crap along.
Let me finish my first novel.
Yeah, I think vampires have helped me deal with being. I've always been an outsider. For whatever reason, I was never the one with a lot of friends. I was a loner, And neurodivergent probably had a lot to do with that. They didn't think girls were neurodivergent when I was younger, you know. So I'm sure that had a lot to do with that. But it really helped me throughout life, kind of dipping in and out of reading vampire books and seeing films and television. And then when I started writing my own, similar, I had a very difficult childhood. And it allowed me, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes I'll go back over what I've written and go, ooh, I was delving deep in there. You know, it allowed me to explore the darkness in my own life and also just darkness. I'm a big believer that we do need to turn around and look at darkness. Look at the darkness in ourselves, look at the darkness in the human race in order to find the light. You know, I don't believe we can just ignore it and go la la la. I think it's going to seep out anyway. So writing vampires and also it allowed me also to finish my first book and publish it. And I love being able to have my own vampire character that lives in my head, you know?
It is kind of fun. I'm just going to put this out there, especially when you start doing the audiobook narration. Hearing your actual imaginary friends talking and hearing people talk about your imaginary friends when they come to pick up a book, it's a little surreal. Yeah. I'm like, I can't decide if I'm 8 years old or crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I had a bad first marriage, and so writing my book sort of was like therapy. It helped get some of the anger I had out and to express. None of the things that happened in the book actually happened to me, so let me just put that out there. But it was still not great, and it was still pretty controlling. And let's just say Johnny has a lot of similarities with someone I know. Yeah, so it got me my MFA too.
Vampires are why I have a job. I built my career around vampires. I built many of my friendships around the relationships I've made through my career around vampires. I have vampire fandoms to thank for most of my best friends, and vampires to thank for discovering my queer identity, specifically Anne Rice and the Anne Rice fandom community. So a lot of things.
The main thing it's given me is some really, really interesting people that have become friends because there is a big old community out there, or several communities actually. And there are some people I now class very highly in my life that I met because I was writing a blog on the internet.
What is one thing that if you could talk to the people out there who say vampires are scary, vampires are only for romance, or vampires are, they have this narrow view, if they, let's pretend for 5 seconds they'll stumble across this video and actually watch it in its entirety. And I really wish I could put Miss Alyssa's face on the screen during this. I won't do that to you, but your facial expression right? If you could tell that person one thing, what do you think that would be?
Vampires are super versatile. You can have them in romance, you can have them in horror, you can have them in fantasy and science fiction. They can be all kinds of things.
I would say go read the My Vampires Are Different TV Tropes page. Does TV Tropes still exist?
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
there's an entire TV Tropes page called My Vampires Are Different. And of course, it's a metaphor. It's representative for anything, not necessarily vampires. But vampires are the example of this trope because there is a vampire for everything. Every time someone invents a vampire, they're like, well, my vampire is going to be different. I'm an author. I'm writing my own vampire, my own book. My vampire is going to be different because I don't want to be the same as everyone else. I'm unique. I'm original. I have my own ideas. No two vampires are alike.
Yep.
I would say go read more.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell them. I will educate you one vampire at a time. Read Andy's blog.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would go, here's all these books. Read them. Then come back to me.
Here's my list of recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you play video games, the Sims 4 Vampire Pack, it is not scary. People, I've heard people say on the forums, I'm scared of vampires. No, okay, like they have like the hunky Caleb Vittor, who's like, just like your dreamboat. He fulfills all of your Edward needs or, Louis needs or whatever. And there's like a vampire, looks kind of Nosferatu-y, but he sleeps in his coffin in bunny slippers. And whenever you go to his house, he's playing pipe organ, and yeah, it's just pipe organ. Yeah.
Basically the same as the opera.
He's just kind of adorable. So yeah.
I put in one of the chapters I wrote recently that it used to be each age will get the vampire they need. Now each consumer gets the vampire they want.
There's a vampire for everyone.
That's right.
Yes.
Sometimes that's not a good thing.
I did love how one of your defenses of Twilight was that they sparkle. That was
sparkle.
Entertaining to me that was a defense, but you made a good point. I'll give you that.
It's original. It's original.
Yeah.
Technically, the Lost Boys sparkled.
Oh,
when the blood effect comes out.
No, Anne Rice's Vampire's blood sparkles too.
Yes, it does. Yes, Anne Rice did it definitely. Both. I remember that about The Lost Boys, which is one of my favorite films of all time.
But Stephanie Meyer swears that she gave herself absolutely no prior knowledge of any vampires. She did not read. She did not watch movies. It all came from her magical brain.
I have a very hard time believing that. I'm sorry. It's hard not to get vampire media. It just isn't. Again, it starts at Sesame Street.
Yeah.
You're going to get it at some point. I don't believe it. Do I
One,
believe she tried? Probably. I'll give her
three vampire medias. 3!
Vampires are just osmosed into our brains from youth. They're part
Yes.
of our culture. You can't escape them.
All right, everyone. And thank you so much for joining me today and for doing this panel. This has been so much fun. If we could all go around and tell the audience who we are, how we fit into the vampire fan. My name is E.H. Drake. I am the independent author of the Blood Herring Chronicles, a vampire buddy cop trilogy, and I run the podcast that you are listening to, which just reached over 100 subscribers over on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for all you do. For one little bit of a giggle, one food that I would much rather drink blood than eat would be sauerkraut. I don't like it. It's slimy. It's nasty.
I'm Aisling Wilder. I'm an independent vampire author of the Books of Rue series, the first of which is out there in the universe. It's called Blood and Sand, and the second of which will hopefully have a this year release if I can finish it. And I also do have a podcast called Wild Rings, which isn't just about vampires. It's about a lot of things. And yeah, I got into vampires when I was really young. I was somehow left with my older cousins to watch television, and one of those old 70s vampire, probably a Hammer film, came on a rerun, and I just remember my cousins, who were probably 2 or 3 years older than me at the time, being really frightened, really terrified. But I, on the other hand, was completely fascinated. And that fascination stayed with me growing up. And then I was also introduced to Anne Rice. And that just completely, Anne Rice, the vampire lestat, especially Louis. I love Louis. I love his tragic vampirehood. So yeah, definitely deep dived into vampires then. And I just kind of have been a bit obsessed with them ever since. And food that I would rather drink blood than eat. Yeah, coriander, otherwise known across the Atlantic as cilantro. It's blah, tastes horrible. Would much rather drink blood than eat that.
I'm Josephine Napier. Call me Jody. I've written a book called Monster, Memoir of a Vampire, and it was published by Laughing Rock Books. And I have 2 more coming out eventually. I'm working on writing the second one right now, and the third one is in progress as well. I got into vampires because I read Salem's Lot as a teenager, probably, and then got into the Anne Rice books and Barbara Hambley's, Sookie Stackhouse books, Robin McKinley, and it just kept going. And so I started to write my own. I don't think there's anything I would drink blood instead of eating. I'm not really into blood. I like my steaks medium well. So
you like shoe leather is what I just heard.
Yeah. Yeah. I want them done. I don't want them to moo at me. So
I'm Catherine Villiard. My book Immortal Gifts came out in February when I fell in love with vampires. I was in high school, just out of high school was when in Vampire Lestat came out. So Anne Rice, I was totally into that, and also that was when The Hunger, the movie, was out, and I was like, oh, David Bowie. Oh, so of course, like I was all about the vampires then. And I also had a 19th century classics phase where I read Dracula. So yeah, a food that I would rather drink blood than eat. I'm a vegetarian, so this is not a fair question for me. And also, I'm Jewish, and blood is not kosher. So,
what if the blood was blessed by a rabbi?
No, that's not how it works, unfortunately.
Okay, I've heard people ask that question. I've always wanted to know what the actual answer was. So
unfortunately, yeah, blessed by a rabbi. I mean, that doesn't make it any more kosher, unfortunately. Like, yeah, there's a list of things that you can and cannot eat, and blood is at the top of no go. So
And it fits so well with your book too, because I did read your book for the Arc, and that answer fits so well with your book.
I'm Andy Boylan. I guess you'd call me a critic more than anything. I run the vampire review blog, Taliesin Meets the Vampires, which has been going for it's getting close to 20 years now, so it's been going a long time. But I also write. I did dabble a little bit in fiction, but I mostly write in academic terms around vampires. So I've got 2 volumes with me and coming out in April. Vampires and the Making of the United States in the 21st Century, and Uncanny Doubles, Doppelgangers, Twins, Clones, and the Gothic. So they're both out. The trouble with those sorts of books, of course, is they're terribly expensive. So I think Uncanny Doubles is on pre-order for £140. I'm not quite sure what that is in dollars.
Expensive.
Oh, yes. Food, I'd rather drink blood than eat. I'm going to go sprouts. They are the devil's vegetable. They are.
But
they
have
are
you had
not
them
good.
roasted with like some nice olive oil and rosemary?
It's all of our answers to this question.
There is.
Change your mind. I can fix you.
There is no getting over the childhood trauma of your mother force feeding you sprouts as a child. And how I got into the vampire genre, I think I'm going to hold my granddad to that, because he used to let me watch Hammer films in the early 70s when I was a wee nipper, and I've loved horror and the vampire genre ever since.
Right. And that leaves the queen of vampiredom over there. Come on, you.
Is that my title? Do I get a title? My name is Elisa Hansen. I am a vampire video essayist. I write vampire video essays, nonfiction, on the internet as the Maven of the Eventide, where I critique vampires in media and pop culture and discuss how they serve as metaphors for the human social condition, feminism, politics, and just anything that affects our lives in the real world based on current events. So I try to look at vampires through history and make them topical for today based on what's requested by my Patreon patrons. So it's kind of a big challenge to be like, hey, I really want you to review this movie. And I look at the movie that my patron will request just because they like that movie. And I'd be like, yes, but how can I make this topical for what's going on in our political climate today in a way that's interesting and relevant? I am also an author of vampire fiction. My first novel is The Company of Death. It's the first of 3. It is a vampire slash zombie slash grim reaper slash sci-fi cyborg. So food I would rather drink blood than eat would probably be green beans. Eat green beans.
My husband would actually try to change your mind on this one.
That is not a very high bar to set, because I think I would be curious to try to drink blood anyway, because like I like things like my steak rare and steak tartare and beef carpaccio I eat all the time, so
So what do you guys think? What makes vampires so popular? Why do they span so many genres? Is it simply the versatility of the character? Or have we barely scratched the surface with this conversation? Please leave your thoughts down below. Thank you to all of my amazing guests for giving me their time and thoughts today. This was such a fun conversation. If you'd like to support them, all the links to their books, podcasts, or blogs will be down below. And don't forget, if you enjoy these interviews and video essays, please make sure that you're liking, commenting, subscribing, and most importantly, sharing. Everything you do makes such a huge difference. And if you want to support my work more directly, you can check out the first 4 chapters of Blood Herring here on YouTube completely free. This supports not only me, but also my audiobook narrators, Dallin and Kennedy Bradford. Thank you so much, and happy writing.